Welcome to May. May is officially Sellers Month, so we'll be focusing on seller transactions this month, which will be super fun. So we're raring up with the, finding motivated sellers and preparing for the listing appointment. And then we'll talk about the actual listing presentation tomorrow and dive into how to run a CMA report or a comparative market analysis report on Thursday at 4. And then we'll just continue on as the month progresses on how to address sellers and how to meet all of their needs. So we are going to dive right in with finding motivated sellers and preparing to win the listing. And as always, if you have any questions as we are moving through this process, never hesitate to unmute yourself and be like, wait, Amy, I have a question. Or I do keep an eye on the chat box, so you can throw it in there as well. Or you can raise your hand. I try to watch for things like that. So I don't know if you knew this on Zoom, you can actually raise your hand. So fun things like that. So I try to keep an eye open, but I never count it as rude if you just unmute yourself and be like, hey, wait, I've got a question. So today's learning objectives are how to find qualified and motivated sellers, customizing your listing presentation and where to find it, 7 steps in the listing process, how to qualify sellers using the pre-listing questionnaire, effective research and preparation, the components of a pre-listing package, how to determine an accurate price range, the comparative market analysis. We're not going to go into that too deep today because, again, we're going to really cover that on Thursday in a separate session all by itself because it's quite the process. And then we'll talk about scripts and dialogues for sellers. So that's today's agenda. All right, finding motivated sellers. Why are we talking about listings? We should be focused on making our business listing based. We really want a 50 to 50, 50-50 ratio of listings to buyers, or even a 60-40 ratio. It could go either way. And the reason that we say that, as new agents, it's usually easier to obtain buyers. For whatever reason, it's easier to handle buyer clients. Maybe there's less people that want them. I don't really know, but it's usually easier to obtain those. You go host an open house, you think buyer, buyer, buyer. So it's usually easier to secure those buyers. However, be listing focused because you have greater control over your time when you have listings, right? You don't have to go show 5 or 6 properties a couple times a week to that client and spend your time doing that. So with listings, it's one item, right? You don't have to drive around. There's just one house. You may go back and forth a few times getting it prepped for listing. You may check on it during the listing period, but it's maybe a once a week visit to the property versus multiple hours a week showing properties. So you gain greater control over your time. It helps you to build a reputation in your marketplace, right? It allows us to put a sign in the yard with our name. It allows us to host open houses with our names on them. It helps to build that reputation. You can promote your listing on social media. So you're getting out there showing that you are a real estate agent. It's a little harder to do that with buyers. What are you going to do? Post, oh, we're going to go look at our 25th property today, right? You don't want to do that, but maybe we are looking at properties, right? So you can promote it with buyers, but it's just easier with listings. You can handle considerably more volume with listings than with buyers, right? If I don't have to spend 5 hours a week with each buyer showing properties, and I have a listing that requires maybe 1 hour a week of my attention leading up to the listing, even so once it's in contract, right? Not so much time. We can handle considerably more business. A lot of sellers become buyers. So that results in additional transactions. It's always good to get that double transaction. And just so you guys know, if you're like, man, my seller, I talked with them, they want to use me for both the list and the buy, but they're asking me for a discount on my commission. Here's what I would recommend on that. Number one, I'm not opposed to that. I usually will do some sort of thing for people who are doing multiple transactions with me. However, I learned the hard way Don't do it on the listing, do it on the buy side. Let them know that you'll credit some money towards their closing costs on the buy side. And the reason that I recommend doing that, if you are going to do something, is because if something happens and they don't sell that property, or they sell that property and then they decide not to purchase a property and you've discounted the listing, now you only got one transaction. So you want to reward them for the duplicate transaction. So that's why I always recommend crediting on the purchase, not on the listing. And you can explain that to them as well, that not that you're afraid they're going to walk away, but that it'll benefit them more having a credit on their closing costs on the buy transaction. So just spin it however you want to. So anyways, multiple transaction, and listings lead to leads, which equals leverage, right? We should be able to leverage all of our listings, not just that if the seller wants to buy another house. Keep in mind too, that if that seller wants to buy another house, you can get that referral as well if they're moving out of the area that you service. So you can not only get the buy transaction, but if they're moving out of the area, you're like, Amy, I can't do it. No, you can, because you can get that referral transaction wherever they're headed off to. But you're going to get sign calls off that listing. You can host your own open houses on that listing. You can door knock the neighborhood multiple times during that listing, right? So we'll dive more into this, but you could door knock the neighborhood when the listing's getting ready to come on the market. You can door knock the neighborhood once you're under contract. You can door knock the neighborhood once you're getting ready to close. And then you could door knock them again once it's closed. Statistics tell us that somebody who can see that for sale sign is going to sell their house. So we want to capture that business. Again, you're also going to leverage social media. You can leverage mailers, make sure your phone number's on that sign so that people can call you. The whole point of that sign in the front yard and the whole point of open houses is to gain more leads and more transactions. Okay, very few homes sell because of an open house, and very few homes sell because there's a sign in the front yard. Most people that call you on that sign, they don't actually end up buying that house. They're going to buy something else or list their own. Any questions about finding motivated sellers? We're going to talk about where to find them here in a minute, but this is the why we should be listing focused. All right, moving right along. If I can get my slides to participate with me today. All right, number 4, where do we find motivated sellers? Good news is we find motivated sellers the same place we find motivated buyers. So we're going to look for life events, door knocking, specialized groups, and referrals, right? Can we get referrals from past clients, from friends, family? Are there referrals from other agents we can capture, right? Oftentimes, people will go look for properties in the area that they want to purchase before they list their home for sale. So oftentimes what happens is, you get a call from an agent in Arkansas and they're like, hey, I've got these clients. They met up with me. They called me off Zillow. They're going to buy a house here. And you're like, bummer, I lost that referral, right? Stay in contact with your people, but that's okay. But they're going to be like, they want to list their house. So, you will take a referral fee to list their house locally, right? So build those relationships with other agents. Make sure you're staying in tune with your database so you know who's going where, and pick up those referrals from your existing database, right? We're not just picking up and talking with our friends. This is not a multi-level marketing company where you're like, hey, you want to get fit and buy my fitness stuff? No, we're going to talk to them and build relationship and ask them who else they know that might use the services of a proficient, competent real estate agent, right? Get those referrals. Life events. I'm really good at this, capturing up on people's life events. Right? You're scrolling through social media. Somebody's posting something about, oh, I think we're up for a job change. Or you're like, oh my gosh, great. That's fabulous news. Is this something that you're forced into, that you're getting to, or you're being transferred? Do you just find a new opportunity? Is it local, right? Is it someplace else, right? We want to find out what that is. Or maybe they're having another baby and you're like, man, I sold them that house 4 years ago and there was only 2 bedrooms in there. Now they're on baby number 4. They probably need a bigger home, right? Let's reach out to them. Are they asking for referrals to contractors to enlarge the size of their home, right? It might be cheaper just to sell the home and buy a larger home. Okay, so just some things to pay attention to with life events. Again, door knocking, we talked about specialized groups. You can create specialized groups, visit specialized groups. You can belong to business networking groups. You can create groups on social media to connect with other people and build those relationships so that you become the realtor of choice when they are ready to sell their property. Connecting with out-of-state owners, those are those referrals. FSBOs, for sale by owners, would be a FSBO. That's how you say that. That's a good place to connect, right? They want to sell their property. They're listing it themselves for sale. They're not super common in the Solano County area. Other areas, they are way more common. In fact, up in North Idaho, for sale by owners, very common. People always try to do things on their own up here, but it's not always best, right? And so you want to have, if you're going to market to them, you want to make sure you put that as one of your lead gen methods and create some systems and processes around it. You may be marketing to expired. I should show you guys my thing. Hold on. I think it's right here. Look. Okay. First, I got a letter in the mail. So we had a listing. We actually pulled off up here and then we rented it out. And then I've been marketed now by this group out of Coeur d'Alene. So they sent me a letter in the mail first, which I did save. Hold on. I was going to see if it's really easy to find. If not, we'll move on. Nope, not easy to find. I don't know what I did with it. I will find the letter, but they sent me a letter first that talked about what they could do and how they could help me get my property sold. And then a couple months later, I got a little box in the mail. I don't really know how much later it was because it went to our old mailbox and wasn't transferred to our new one. It just says here, it's got a little thing that says you recently received information about selling your beautiful home, and it says Brewtiful Home with BREW. It's a play on words because they also sent me some coffee. If your interest has been perked, right, get it coffee, we'd love to stir up a discussion over a cup of coffee. Thanks a latte. And then it's got their name on it with some referrals on the back and came in a cute little box with some coffee that we haven't opened. So anyways, fun little things like that to try to get the attention of expired or withdrawn listings. There you go. You can do probate sales, right? Creating relationships with attorneys and people that handle probate cases, right? Great line of work there, as well as like divorce attorneys, right? So anybody that might handle life events where people are going to need to sell a property, create relationships with those people. Craigslist, right? People post things on Craigslist all the time, maybe houses for sale, maybe they're like estate sale, right? Reach out to those and talk with them. Your circle of influence, I always say dive into your database first. It's all about your database, that circle of influence. Garage sales. Why are people having garage sales? Some just spring clean. Others are moving. Go visit garage sales. Right, and talk with them. Oh, are you just cleaning out your house? You guys are getting ready to move? Oh, perfect. You have an agent, right? So go garage selling, right? Combine two things into one, lead gen and garage selling. Leticia has a question.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, well, good morning, first of all.
Good morning.
I wanted to ask you, what would you send to sellers or to people that are in they have the notice of default, or and they're like they're before foreclosure?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right. So that's another method that's not on our circle, is targeting people with notices of defaults, right? So a notice of default is recorded against the property once they become like 90 days late. So it's usually like 120 days into the process. The lender can record a notice of default. You can get lists of properties with notices of defaults recorded against them on a regular basis. I would not trust Zillow. Zillow is not accurate information. And you always want to double check the information, because sometimes the lender records, like if I were to go get a list of properties with notices of default filed against them now, you want to check the date that was filed, because lenders record that notice of default, but sometimes they don't record it off the title of the property. Or like Zillow, it gets reported to Zillow that there's a notice of default filed and they show it on their listings, but they don't ever go back and remove that. So some of them are quite old and the properties have either been sold or they got current on their mortgage. So what would you send somebody that's got a notice of default? That is a fabulous question. I've never lead gen noticed. That's not true. I did once. I sent out letters. We went and dropped letters out on people's doorsteps. Number one, you want to be sympathetic to the situation, right? These people are in a situation where they're having problems making mortgage payments, which means that they're going to have problems getting into the next home as well. So that's oftentimes why people stay in homes, especially right back in like 2006, people were getting foreclosed on because the market was all wonky and their interest rates were jumping from 6.5%. Yes, 6.5% was a great rate back in like 2005, 2006, 2007. But they were jumping from 6.5% to like 8% because we were in adjustable rate mortgages or mortgages where they were just paying interest only that now they had to pay the full payment for that they could have never qualified for. So those people literally couldn't afford to stay in their house. They were getting notices of default because there was no way they could make the payment. In today's and the market was tanking. So there was no equity there. There was no reason for people to sell. They were just sitting in their homes until they could get a relative to buy it for them so they could continue living in it, or until the lender kicked them out. Because why wouldn't we live for free for a year and a half, which a lot of people did. But in today's market, most people have equity, right? There's value there. So helping show them how they can get out of their situation, being empathetic to what they're going on, whether it's a job change, job loss, they just like got in over their head, whatever that might be. You want to address that and you want to be sympathetic to that. And then you want to come at it from adding value, and that you want to help them, whether that means selling their home or whether it means giving them suggestions of ways that they may be able to stay in their home. And, we want to figure out, what does that next step look like? Rentals are hard to find. Are they wanting to stay in the area? Do we have people that are sympathetic to that, like property management companies, right? That we can connect with to help get these people in the door to their next property. Can we help find the solution for them? Right? Can we show them what kind of equity they might have in their home? My goal is I was hoping to do it this month, but maybe next month. There's an agent that I'm trying to connect with that is really good at lead genning notice of default sellers. And I'm going to try to get him into the office to teach a class on notice of defaults, because that is not one that I've personally spent much time doing. Did that help answer your question though, Leticia? Perfect. All right.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we want to find sellers. Again, we always want to come at it with value, your farm. It doesn't say on here, but open houses are a really good method of lead gen for sellers, because even though most people think, oh, I pick up buyers. Yes, buyers do walk through the door, but you know who else walks through the door? All those neighbors and people around the neighborhood that are like, oh, that's a similar floor plan to mine. Let me go see what it's got and what its listed price is at, right? And they're thinking about selling. So never count any method of lead gen out for finding potential sellers. Okay, even those that are doing like the Zillow program and stuff, people asking to buy the house, they may have a house that they need to sell. So we always want to ask that question, right? Oftentimes, if we don't ask the question, people don't know that agents can do both a purchase and a listing. So they think, oh, you're a buyer's agent, I need to find somebody else to list my home. So we need to just make sure that we're communicating that. And just remember, it's all about a relationship and value. Okay. Any other questions about where to find motivated sellers? All right, scripts and dialogues. Formula for a successful script, you want to memorize it. We want to, and I would say more than memorize, I'd go down to the third point, which is internalize. I wouldn't customize it so much, right? I'd customize it a little bit. You want it to sound like you. If it says, "Are thou ready to sell a house?" and you're like, Amy, I'm not from the Shakespearean culture. I'm just going to say, are you wanting to sell a house, right? That's okay to change up those words, but we don't want to change the script completely, because most of the time when we find scripts, like if you go onto the 1U and search seller scripts, you're going to find seller scripts in there. Most of the time with those scripts, they're there because they've proven to be successful. So yes, you need to tweak it a little bit so it sounds like you. It has what we call your voice, as far as customize it. But we want to internalize that script. You want to read it, write it, look at yourself, say it. You can record it and listen to yourself as you're driving around town showing properties, right? We want to internalize that script. It's just going to become second nature to us. You're going to run into somebody in the grocery store. They're going to be like, man, this is a lot of work. I'm having problems figuring out, what to buy because I don't want to put too much stuff in my fridge. And then all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh, why don't you want to put too much stuff in your fridge? Does it not work well? And they'll be like, no, we're getting ready to go on vacation to go look for a new place to live. Like we're thinking about selling and moving out of state. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Right. And then that script is just going to flow off and be like, oh, that's amazing. What's your time frame look like? What states are you looking at? Right. We're just going to go into building that rapport and that relationship. And then you're going to ask and let them know that you're a real estate agent and then be like, hey, I would be happy to swing by. I know you're getting ready to go on vacation now, but maybe when you get back, I'd be happy to swing by, do a quick walkthrough of your property and give you some tips and tricks to get your property ready for market. So that when you are ready and you make that decision of where you're going to go, that your house is going to be ready as well. Does that sound good? And they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, you're like the angels opened up and poured you into the grocery store just for me today to take that stress off my back. Right. So it's just going to become second nature to you if you internalize it. And then you want to make sure to capitalize on every opportunity. Okay. So again, you can go into the One University and search for seller scripts, and there you will find lots of seller scripts. Any questions about scripts and dialogue? This is something too that you want it to be specific to the method of lead gen, right? So for the most part, it's going to be, I'm going to tell you now, it's all about relationship. It's about asking questions, staying in control of the conversation, and listening to what a potential seller or potential client has to say. But if you are calling somebody like a FSBO or expired or circle dialing around a potential listing or open house, you do want to have a script, and we still want to make it relationship based. We still want to try to like pull on their heartstrings and get in there on relationships, but you do want to find a script specific to that method so that it's time tested to be able to reach those people. Okay. You want to make sure that you have lead generation time blocked on your calendar each and every day, and that you have a goal. Okay. RevUp teaches us that we should have 3 hours of lead gen a day, ideally between the hours of like 9 and noon. And you're gonna be like, Amy, why 9 and noon? Is there something special? And you're gonna be like, no, it's in the morning though. And it's before anything else can take your time away. If you're like, man, I'm gonna lead gen at 2 o'clock today, I can guarantee you between the hours of 9 and 2, the volcano is going to erupt and your kids are going to get sick and your listing is going to fall apart. And then all of a sudden 2 is going to roll around. And if you even have time to spare by 2 o'clock, you're going to be so exhausted. You'll be like, I don't really want to do it today. And your lead gen is going to happen probably 50% of the time if you're lucky. That's why we recommend doing it in the morning so that you knock it out and get it done. Okay. We recommend that you spend an hour preparing. Right? So you sit down for lead gen, you devise who you're going to call today, what you're going to talk to them about, what the script is that you're going to use, what your goals are, you're going to prepare. Hour 2 is prospecting. These are new leads. These are not somebody we talked to 2 days ago. These are people that are new leads that we're just going to be calling, we're door knocking, we're doing whatever. Maybe it's hosting the open house, who knows what it is, but you're going to be prospecting for hour number 2. And then hour number 3 is going to be follow-up. That might be following up with the people we talked to yesterday. It could be sending things out to those people we talked to in hour 2. It could be making notes and updating our database, right? Hour 3 is going to be follow-up. Now, I recommend personally that you don't just make it like a time thing, that we make it goal-oriented, right? If you're like, man, I just need 1 appointment per week. It could be a buyer, it could be a listing, it doesn't matter. Then I might be like, hey, I'm going to call on Monday. I'm going to block out like 4 hours for that hour 2. It's actually going to be like a 6-hour process. I'm going to prepare for an hour. I'm going to follow up for an hour. I'm going to spend up to 4 hours prospecting in the middle until I set that appointment. Once I set that appointment on Monday, I'm good for the rest of the week. I don't have to worry about anything else or doing any more lead gen. If you reach the end of whatever time you have blocked for that, then you may have to go on to the next day. But I would make it like goal-based like that. Like, hey, I'm dialing until I get an appointment. Maybe you need 3 appointments a week. Maybe you need to set 5 appointments a week, whatever that is, that you're just dialing until it happens. I think that's a way better way than just like the random, like, oh, I've got an hour to lead gen. And it's like, okay, what's the next phone number? Oh, okay, here it is. All right, let me dial that phone number. It just took me 15 seconds to dial a phone number. Like it should be like one after another. Like we want to be game on during that second hour of prospecting with the goal in mind that if I get that appointment booked with this next person, I'm done. I don't have to make another phone call. I don't have to go knock on another door. I don't have to do another open house next weekend, whatever it is. Make your goals there so that you have something to get up and get excited about. Okay. During this prospecting time, this 3-hour prospecting schedule, your time block for lead gen, turn off your notifications, shut down social media, right? Eliminate distractions, shut the door, put a sign on the door, do not interrupt until after 12 o'clock, whatever that might be, but clear, like on what's that? For the Love of the Game, that movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a baseball movie. I tend to like baseball movies, but he's standing on the pitcher's mound and he goes, clear the mechanism, and everything kind of drowns out. That's your goal with lead gen. That's what you're trying to accomplish. Any questions about time blocking for lead generation? No, we're good. All right. Again, it doesn't have to be phone calls. It's prospecting. So it could be door knocking. It could be open houses. It could be contacting for sale by owners. It could be dropping things off on people's doors, whatever that is, prospecting. But the goal with prospecting, right? Prospecting versus marketing. I'm just going to touch on this because I feel like I need to reiterate this every chance I get. The goal is we want to be prospecting based and marketing enhanced. So prospecting is face to face, what we call belly to belly. It's having conversations, where marketing is backing that up with a marketing piece. So I may go door knock a neighborhood and then I may send something to them in the mail, or the next week I may drop something off on their doorstep because I had the conversation with them last week. So our goal is conversations. During this prospecting time, you want to be tracking your progress. Okay, every day of the week, every week of the month, we want to know how many face-to-faces did I have with my circle of influence? How many calls did I make to my circle of influence, right? Or you call that your database. How many mailers or notes did I send out? How many social media messages? How many open houses did I host? How many open house call contacts did I have? How many open house follow-ups did I do? How many property emails went out? How many FSBO contacts? How many phone calls did I make? How many doors did I knock? Out of those doors that I knocked, how many people opened? How many conversations did I have? How many appointments did I book? And you want to have a goal versus actual as well. If my goal is to have 50 conversations this week with my circle of influence, right? It might be like conversations, it might be dials, whatever your goal is, you put it in there and track it against the goal. And then this gives us a way that when you're struggling and you come to somebody, your mentor, you come to me and you're like, Amy, I just don't have any business. And I'm like, what have you been doing for lead gen? And you're like, I don't know. Then there's nothing to go from. But if you're like, man, I've been making my calls every day. I've been doing open houses. I'm gonna be like, how many open houses did you do last month? They're gonna be like, let me think about that for, right? Like track it so you know, so you can be like, I hosted 3 open houses last week. Great. How many leads did you get from those open houses? I got 36 leads from those 3 open houses. Great. How many of those have you followed up with and actually gotten a hold of, right? We're going to like narrow it down. Where's the process breaking down? If you're like, man, I hosted 4 open houses last month, and I'm going to be like, how many leads? You're like 0. Then we know exactly where the system broke down, right? Super easy to find that, well, if we're having open houses and we're not getting any leads, then we need to change the way that we're doing our open houses. If we're doing open houses and we're getting leads, but we can't convert them, or we can't get them to pick up the phone again, then we need to fix our follow-up plan, or we may need to fix how we're having those conversations during the open houses, right? So track it so that you know what your conversion ratios are, so that you know moving in each month and each year how to tweak what the actions are that you're doing to get the results that you want. Any questions about your prospecting schedule or tracking that progress? Okay, good example is If I knew that the average sales price in Vacaville was $500,000 and I was going to make 2% off that 500,000, we're just doing easy math here today, in case you're like, Amy, it's way higher than that. That's all right. That's $10,000, right? So if I have to make 100 phone calls to obtain a prospect that either buys or sells and that actually closes, then each phone call is going to be worth $100, right? That's $100 phone call. I've got to make 100 of these phone calls in order to get that closing? Would you be more excited to make those phone calls if you knew about that? Or, hey, I know I've got to knock on 200 doors to connect with somebody who wants to sell a home, right? Then the average commission is 10,000. Then you're like, man, it's a $50 door knock. Every time I knock on a door, which literally takes me 30 seconds to knock on a door, I usually count to 10 before I walk away from that door very slowly, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. If I'm not hearing anything, nobody answers the door by 10 Mississippi, I'm out and on to the next door, right? So literally like 30 seconds, door to door to door to door. And each of those door knocks is worth $50. Different way to look at it, right? I know it's just a numbers game. I know I have to get through those 200 knocks to get to the closing. Okay. Preparing to win the listing, right? We've now found a motivated seller that's like, hey, I'm thinking about selling my property. And you're like, now what do I do? Oh, Leticia, did you have another question?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask because I think we got a email or something that we can't go door knocking anymore if we don't have a if we're, I guess the police, they were getting too many, door knocking, maybe from solar companies and people didn't like that. So I guess some people don't like that. And now we have to have like some kind of letting them know who we are or a permit or something.
Yes. So there's a solicitation permit you can obtain from the city wherever you're at and wherever you're door knocking. Most cities, I mean, check their rules. Vacaville has it, but some other cities may not. So make sure you know the rules and the laws. And then you got to think about, well, am I really soliciting? Like, am I selling something or am I just trying to connect with people? So you can determine that. Ed made an official call on it inside the Facebook group and just said like, well, technically we're not soliciting and sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry, but so it depends how you want to. I don't think it's super hard to obtain that solicitation permit. So feel free to go and look into that and do that. And I wouldn't let that hold you back. Ask for forgiveness. Oh, I didn't say that on record, did I? Darn it. You should get the solicitation permit if you're selling things. But Ed made an official take on it on our Facebook group. So just make sure you're adhering to the laws. My theory, just so everybody knows, when knocking on doors, because you see those signs that are like no solicitation, or somebody answer the door and be like, can't you read? And be like, I'm not selling you anything. I'm just keeping you updated. Like, I just wanted to keep you posted on what's going on in the market and some fun things to do around town. So I just wanted to provide you with some information. And they're like, oh, okay, right? So it all depends on what you're trying. I mean, if you're just knocking on the door and being like, hey, do you want to sell your house? Then you should probably have a solicitation permit for sure. But if you're like in my farm, I always dropped off like just the market statistics and just looking to have a conversation, right? I wasn't necessarily selling anything. So there you go. It's up to you. Also, same thing with circle dialing, just so you know, the world is becoming a crazy place and people are just becoming more and more unfriendly. Don't hear me wrong on that though, because I rarely ever ran into people that were unfriendly when I knocked on their doors, especially if it was like 100 degrees outside. Most people were more than friendly. They'd offer me water and popsicles. People are super nice. Or if it's super cold, right? I walked my neighborhood one time with my broken foot. So I had my peg leg. Peggy Sue came with me because I wasn't allowed to put weight on my leg. And I walked all 400 homes on Peggy Sue. I don't recommend that, but I got lots of sympathy. So people are generally very nice, but the world is becoming more and more unfriendly. So yes, you should probably look into the solicitation permit. And if you're doing phone calls and dialing to people who haven't given you their information, right? They didn't write their phone number down on a piece of paper. You're just getting a list of people from some other source. You should be scrubbing that against the national do not call list. There are ways to do that. Don't ask me how. You can register on the Do Not Call registry, and then you can get the list of phone numbers for area codes. And anyways, it's a process. And there's also companies that'll do that for you. Or if you're getting numbers from places like, I think the title company scrubs it against the Do Not Call list if you use their, I can't think of what their program is called. Or then if you have like a Mojo or a Land Voice or something like that, they also usually scrub those against the Do Not Call list. Please don't call people that haven't given you permission. Don't call them. You will get in trouble. There have been lawsuits. It's a lot of money. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just be careful with what you do for people who haven't asked you for your information. Okay. Moving on to preparing to win the listing. Now that we got our solicitation permit, we've scrubbed our people against the Do Not Call list, and we're ready to go get business. We have found somebody who wants to sell their home. I know you're like, Amy, it feels hopeless. It's not. There's lots of people that want to sell homes. In fact, this morning, there were only 88 active homes on the market in Vacaville. So there's a lot of people out there, I'm sure of it, that want to sell homes, because 88 is not enough people to be moving around. Maybe you should convince them to move out of state. I don't know, but go get some listings, because buyers need houses to buy at this point. Like, it's getting a little treacherous out there for our poor buyers. Not only are they getting bombarded with high interest rates, but they're also now getting bombarded with the fact that there's just no inventory and they're competing with multiple offers. So go get some more listings, and we're going to win that listing. Maybe. There we go. All right, we are going to customize your listing presentation. Start with this. We talked about time blocking earlier for your prospecting schedule. Please time block on your calendar for admin activities in your real estate business. We need to work in our business right now as we're growing our business so that we can work on our business later, right? So we need to be in there, like, getting stuff like this done. So you need to customize your listing presentation. I thought that I included, because this one's out of order is why. So I included a screenshot. Let me find it somewhere up here. I don't know why this one's out of order, but we will find, since we had talked about it. Give me just a second. It's coming. All right, here we go. Here's where you find, we have a free listing presentation that you can find. You go into the one zone, you go on the menu on the left-hand side there, right? It says like compliance, office, SkySlope, user, brokerage, right? One of them is marketing. If you click on the little arrow next to marketing on the left-hand side of the page, you can select listing presentations, and then it pops up a new window that has the 2020 new listing presentation vertical. You've got the 2020 new listing presentation. That one's going to be horizontal, or you got the 2019 listing presentation. If you're living in the past, feel free to stick with the 2019. I don't really care which one you go with. It's going to, hold on. This is probably going to screw everything up, but let me show you. We'll go backwards here in a minute. All right, here we go. Oh, hold on. All right. The listing presentation comes in a PowerPoint. If you're like, Amy, I don't have PowerPoint, that's okay. Go into your Google Drive and upload it into Google Drive. It's going to look, I'm just waiting for it to update. There. There is lots of things that you need to edit, but if you put it into your Google Drive, you can open it as a Google slideshow, and then you can go in there and edit it. And if you're like, Amy, I'm not that tech savvy, there's no way I'm ever presenting this like in a slideshow to my clients, that's okay. From here, you can print it once it's done. Just because it's in PowerPoint or Google Slides, don't let that scare you off. You can edit it and then print it if you want to. You can take out some of the dark fonts or dark pages if you are going to print it. But I do recommend printing out this pre-listing presentation. You're gonna want to print it out anyways, because the goal is going to be that we're going to talk about here in a minute, that you're going to drop it off as part of your pre-listing package. And I recommend maybe looking online or talking with Staples or someplace like that, where you can get it printed and like professionally bound so it looks really nice in an affordable way. Okay. I don't know. I think we get charged like 25 cents per color copy or something like that in the office. So it's, hold on, my window's covering how many slides it is. It's going to cost you $13 to print this. Oh, there's some blank slides in here. So it's going to cost you like $12 to print this. No, I can't do math. It's all right though. it's going to cost you like $6 to print this in the office, which isn't too bad. And then you could staple it and put it in a nice folder or do whatever, or you could send it someplace that can probably do it for cheaper and make it look nicer. There are lots of things though that you need to edit in here. So don't wait until you have a listing that you need to drop off a pre-listing packet for. Make this on your calendar right away. Like you're going to upload it with the, you're going to add the Realty One Group Fox logo. You're going to upload your information on here. There's a place to put like your information, right? Enter info here. So you need to fill in that. You don't want to leave the enter info here example on there. You actually want to fill it in and fill in your pictures. So lots of things you need to do on that. Make sure you take the time to do it. Does anybody have any questions about how to find that or how to? Yes, Anastasia.
Please. Yes, please. How did you find that?
Okay, so you go in to, hold on, I've got so many little bubbles over my window. It's hard to find on that screen. So give me just a second. You're going to go in to your one login. And you, oh, look, I'll be able to find it. And you're going to go to One Zone. One Zone. It's going to open up your One Zone. So I moved my bubbles to the other side of the window. And some reason you guys are like in the middle of my screen. I guess you guys are stuck there. Oh, there we go. Oh, now you're on the side. All right. You're over here on the left-hand side in One Zone. Number one, get your profile to 100%. Mine's at 69%. Get it to 100. You're going to scroll down here to marketing. Marketing. Listing presentation is right there. Ta-da! And then you just click on it, it'll download it, and then you can upload it into your Google Drive. All right.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Let me see if I can get my life back together now. No. All righty. I think I've got everybody back to where they go. I'm just waiting for it to magically load back up over here. And then we're going to backtrack a few slides. Apparently I made it angry. Really angry today. And then we're just waiting patiently. If anybody has any questions while we wait patiently for my Google slides to participate in the process again, feel free to ask. Oh, we're getting progress. Maybe. All right. We'll wait patiently for that. Oh, yeah. Question? Go ahead, Brittany.
So you were saying like for finding motivated sellers, for people who you can't call because you can like get in trouble, like that list of like FSBO and specialized groups, and are those people like we can't call them unless they contact us, or what were you saying?
So you want to scrub it against the do not call, the national do not call list. So if oftentimes people get like for sale by owners and those type of listings from like a call service, like they'll subscribe to LandVoice or RedX or Mojo, and those are scrubbed against the do not call list. So it'll tell you that it's whether they're on the do not call list or not. But if you're just randomly like scrolling through Zillow or wherever looking for expireds or for sale by owners, you do want to scrub it against the National Do Not Call Registry. And you can Google the National Do Not Call Registry, and you can walk through that process of how exactly to scrub those. So if you're going to be marketing to people and specifically making phone calls to people, it's really making phone calls to people that have not given you their information. So they don't even have to say, yeah, you can call me, but like they come through your open house, they put your name down on a piece of paper and their phone number. You've gotten permission to call them now. However, if you call them and they're like, hey, never call me again, put me on your do not call list, then you don't call them again. That is like the one like out. But for like FSBOs and expireds, instead of calling, if you're nervous about the do not call list or can't figure out how to scrub it, you could go knock on their door, drop something off in person to them or mail stuff to them, right? So there's lots of options there where you can reach out to those people. It's still fair game to visit them in person. You just can't call them on the phone if you don't scrub it against the do not call list.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Good question. Thank you. All right. We have resumed our presentation. All right. So the 7 steps in the listing process. We are not going to make it through all of these today. We're going to make it through step 3 today, and then we'll re-pick up tomorrow with the listing presentation. But step 1 is you're going to complete the pre-listing questionnaire, qualify the seller, and set the listing appointment. Okay. We want to do all 3 of those in step 1. Step 2 is you're going to do research and preparation for the listing appointment. Step 3 is you're going to create and deliver the pre-listing package. Then you move on to step 4, which is the actual listing presentation, where you're going to present your marketing and pricing strategies. Step 5 is you're going to ask for the listing, complete the listing paperwork, and obtain signatures. Step 6 is you're going to market and service the listing. And step 7 is your after the sale follow-up system. So let's dive into step number 1. Oh, let's talk about mindset first, right? It's okay to say no, right? I only work with motivated, qualified, and realistic sellers. If we go sit down with a seller and we know that their house is only worth 550 and they're like, I want to list it for 700,000. It's okay to say no, right? It's okay. If you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, this seller is overbearing and controlling, and this is not going to go well. This is going to be a disaster. It's okay to say, we're not going to work together right now. Okay. It's okay to do that. You don't want to waste time with people who aren't motivated, qualified, and realistic or fun to work with. Life is too short to work with miserable people. Okay. You can say no with grace, right? So Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm afraid that we are not the best match for doing business at this time. I know I will not be able to meet your expectations, and I would rather turn you down now than disappoint you later. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I wish you the very best. It's okay to send them on their way. Maybe you can even offer to make them referrals to other potential agents, but why would you do that to somebody else? So I would just be like, it's not the time. Sometimes, like if it's a price issue and you're like, man, the comps, everything, it's pointing to your house being worth 550. It's not worth 700. We've had this conversation, and then you're like, I'm afraid that we're probably not the best match. Like, I'm just going to disappoint you by not being able to obtain what you're wanting to for your house. And I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later. And then they're gonna be like, oh, like you were that serious about the price. And you're like, yeah, remember I showed you all those comps. And they're gonna be like, okay, well, could we try it at 575? Right. And then you might be like, okay, well, this is more realistic. Like this we can work with, right? So sometimes that works in your favor, and sometimes it's good just to like send them on their way and be done. Okay. So never be afraid to say no with grace. And that goes for both buyers and sellers. Okay. You don't have to justify, you don't have to argue with them. We don't have to get our feelings hurt, right? We don't have to hurt their feelings. If they ask why, you might just want to say something like, they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, why? And you might be like, well, it's just that I have very strict criteria for each and every listing that I take. And since I don't make a dime until it changes hands, I have to be sure that I can sell your listing. So at this time, I just don't think that will happen. If anything changes, let's get back in touch with one another, right? So you can like let them down easy like that, right? So you don't have to be like, well, I think you're stupid and you're listing it too high and you're never going to sell this property, right? There's no need to go there. We can be professional and just be like, hey, I don't get paid until this property sells. And I just have to be assured that what we're talking about, that I can get your property to sell. And I just don't think that's going to happen at this time. Super simple. Okay. Any questions about saying no to people? All right. Step 1 in the listing process is we are going to complete the pre-listing questionnaire. We are going to qualify the seller and we're going to set that listing appointment. If the seller is not ready, willing, and able, all 3 of those things, right? They're not qualified to sell the property right now. That does not mean that I write them off, just so everybody knows. It just means that I change my approach. if I talk with somebody and they're like, I can tell that the timing's not here, that they're not ready to sell, that they're not even like, it's just kind of in the thinking process. I want to build that relationship. So I may go ahead and set an appointment to do a quick walkthrough of their property, but I may spend, 20 minutes there instead of an hour there doing the full presentation. I may not drop off the whole pre-listing package. I may just show up to do a walkthrough so that I can get face to face with them and build that rapport. It's the same ideas like with online internet leads, right? When we talk about like those that are participating in the Zillow program or you get a sign call, sometimes it's hard to get those people into the office first. Sometimes we got to go show them a property, like one property or two, to build that rapport and get them comfortable with us. And then we can bring them into the office and have that conversation about the BRBC and all of those other things that we need to talk about. And it's the same thing with sellers. Sometimes we've got to give just a little in order to build that rapport and that relationship with them to get in the door to be able to have that conversation about listing their house. So I never underestimate the power of meeting with them in person. It just may change if they're not qualified. So we definitely want to qualify our sellers and know exactly where they're at so that we know how to approach it. The pre-listing questionnaire looks something like this. You're going to fill in the people's name, address, city, state, zip, right? What's their phone number? What's their spouse's phone number? If when we sit down, right, you're talking about wanting to list your house. If what I share and discuss makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident in my system, will you consider working with me to get your home sold? Yes or no? Right? Do you plan to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? If somebody says yes to that question, just so you know, my follow-up question is going to be, are you meeting with them before our appointment or after our appointment? Right? I want to know where I am in line of those appointments. The next question is, have you tried selling your home before? Well, yeah, we did. Like it was on the market a year ago. It didn't sell. It was, remember that funky time, like all of a sudden, like the market just kind of tanked last spring. It was weird. And we saw the values going down a little bit. And so we pulled it off the market because we didn't have to sell at that time and we didn't want to take less. And now we've been here another year. We're ready to get this sucker sold and get out of here, right? Or we're just bursting at the seams and we just don't fit in this house anymore. We thought we could make it work. We tried another year. It needs to sell, right? So ask, why do you think it didn't sell, right? What made you decide to sell this home? Right? We're trying to understand what their motivation is for selling the home. Why do they want to sell? What's their goal? What's their intention? What are we going to keep circling them back to during our listing presentation to remind them of the pain point if the house does not sell? Right? And we want to feel out their motivation. What made you decide to sell this home? Well, we were just thinking that maybe it might be time to downsize. We're not exactly sure yet, right? Then we want to, like, you may have somebody that seems like they're qualified, but we need to like enhance their motivation a little bit. We need to have conversation about what kind of home they're looking to buy. Where are they looking to buy? Maybe show them some listings in those areas. See if there's something that suits their fancy that's going to push them over the edge to getting their house sold. You want to pre-qualify every single person that you're going to sit down with to do that full listing appointment with. Any questions about the pre-listing questionnaire? When we go to set our appointments, please don't say, well, what time works for you? My schedule is completely open, right? We want to seem like we are the busy happening agent, even if we're not, and even if our schedule is completely wide open. Remember when we talked about the time blocking, I said, put some pre-appointment time slots on your calendar so that when we're on the phone with somebody, it makes it really easy to be like, hey, does morning or afternoon work better for you? And they'd be like, morning, perfect. I have an appointment at Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Does that work for you? Right? You may have an appointment at Wednesday at 9 o'clock, at Thursday at 9 o'clock, at Thursday at 11 o'clock, 8:30, 7, that you don't care. As long as they want to meet with you, you'll figure out how to make that happen. Don't tell them that though. Just give them some appointment time slots. And then they're like, oh, 9 o'clock, that's a little early. Can we do a little later in the day? You can be like, oh, man, let me see. I've got to rearrange a couple things. I can actually do Thursday at 10 o'clock. Does that work better for you? Right? So we bump it around, even if you're like, man, I was wide open all morning long. Like, right? It's all in how you present yourself. So just be careful with those listing appointments. Set the listing appointment. Okay. We want to make sure that you set it a couple days in advance, because our next step is that we're going to prepare that we're going to do some research and get that pre-listing packet done. And then step 3 is that we're actually going to drop that off for them before the listing appointment. So we don't want to be like, I'm so desperate. Like, how about today at 3? No, because we're not going to be able to move through the whole process. And we want to move them through the whole process and present a professional front, have them time to review and process and internalize some of the information that we're going to give them before we actually sit down with them at their house. Because ultimately our goal is when we sit down with them at their house, it's going to be a really quick, hey, I'm going to walk through your property really quick. And then we're going to sign that listing agreement and get this process started, right? That's our goal, sitting down with them once we get to the house. So we want to leave enough time to be able to do that. So you want to set it a couple days in advance. All right. All right, there are more. When we move into, oops, I skipped 2. When we move into step 2, we have the research and preparation. If you can't see the home before your appointment, ask questions. Sometimes it's really easy to log on to the MLS, search the property address, and see when the last time it sold was. If it was like 2 years ago, it makes it really easier. If it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, perfect. Since you've lived in that home, have you done any improvements or updates to the property? Right now, I'm looking at the pictures of the property from the previous listing. They're telling me, oh yeah, we completely remodeled the kitchen. We updated both bathrooms and replaced all the flooring. And we're pretty sure the roof needs done, but we haven't done that yet. We should probably have that looked at before we decide to go on the market, right? So we can look at that and we can ask them questions about what updates or changes they've done. If you can't find it in the MLS, then we need to dig a little deeper. You might want to ask things like this pre-listing questionnaire to seller, right? We've set the appointment. Now we're going over the information. Are you the sole owner listed on the property? Right? Yes, I'm the sole owner. They're gonna be like, oh, well, actually, no, it's me and my sister. It's in a trust, right? So now we are getting information about how to move forward with this. How long have you lived in the property? Why are you looking to sell? Do you have an idea of what price you may think your home is worth or that your home will sell for, right? Get an idea of what they're thinking in the head so that when we sit down to do our CMA report or our comparative market analysis, we know whether we're going to make them really happy or really sad. Okay, let's see if they've got a number. Do you have solar? Do you have any improvements to your home since you've lived there? How old is the roof? Are there any leaks or issues? Right? How old is the air conditioner? Is it in proper working condition? What kind of flooring do you have throughout the home? Has the kitchen been remodeled? If so, when? If they're like, it's my favorite when people are like, remodeled kitchen, and you look at the photo and you're like, well, it was remodeled in 1993. Guess that counts as remodeled, right? So when was it remodeled? What kind of kitchen cabinets are there? I might just ask like, hey, what color are your kitchen cabinets, right? Is there a pantry? What type of countertop? Is it granite, tile, laminate, right? What are the style or color of your appliances? Are you planning to leave the fridge and the washer and dryer, or do you want to take those items with you? How old are they? Is your home painted bright colors, or do you have a more neutral color palette, or is it white, right? Ask what paint colors you've got. When was the last time the walls were painted? Have the bathrooms been remodeled? When? What color or style is the vanity? What type of countertops in the bathroom? What color are the fixtures? Are they gold, right? Chrome, nickel, brass? All these good questions. Is the yard landscape? Do you have automatic watering, right? We want to get an idea for the feel of the home. Brittany has a question.
Is this page and the questionnaire in the listing presentation on OneZone, or?
It is not, but I will
Okay.
have Abby link these in. I think they're in our listing folder, Abby. I'll have her make sure she links it with on the spreadsheet with all the videos, and then puts it in the comment section as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Right, so we want to get an idea. I always drive by the property before I have the listing appointment, so I know what the outside looks like, right? Oftentimes the outside is a resemblance of what's going on in the inside of the property. Okay, so we're gonna drive by, get an idea and a feel for it. you want to look at this property through the eyes of the buyer, right? Is the landscape overgrown? Is it inviting? Does it have good curb appeal? Right? What does it look like? Are the garage doors in good shape? So you're going to do some research so that you're prepared to handle any objections, and you're going to outperform the competition because you're going to be able to give them the most exact idea of what that value is going to look like and what your plan is for getting that property sold. Okay. From there, you're going to move on to step 3, which is creating and delivering the pre-listing package. So you want to put some information about their home in your pre-listing package. I usually include like the tax roll, which is where I got all the information about their property. Okay, it shows like how many bedrooms and bathrooms are on public record, what the square footage is, the lot size, who's listed on title. It has all of that information. So I usually include that. I do a CMA package, a comparative market analysis of the property. I'm going to include that. I'm going to include my pre-listing package, right? So basically the listing presentation, I'm going to include that in there, which may include a copy of my resume or some testimonials from past clients, right? I'm going to include sample contracts, right? So I'm going to include a copy of the sample listing agreement, just like a blank listing agreement, maybe a blank seller property questionnaire, a blank transfer disclosure statement, a blank disclosure information advisory, and maybe like a statewide buyer and seller advisory. Kind of walks them through with the things that they're going to need to fill out and how they need to disclose information. You also want to include a cover letter. Okay, I do recommend dropping this off in person. You could also throw it in the mail. You could also email it as well. There's lots of options. We do live in an age of technology, but I do recommend dropping it off in person. Even if you don't knock on their door, you just leave it on their doorstep. Just let them know that, hey, I'm going to be dropping something off at your house today that you can take a look at before our appointment on Thursday at 9 o'clock. Does that sound good, right? Like it gives you another opportunity to confirm with them that you're dropping something off and that your appointment time is still good. The example cover letter, which we can also get in that listing folder that you guys can get access to, encloses some information I've gathered about your home. I also have included information about myself and my company and the listing contracts for you to review if you choose. Please feel free to review any of the enclosed information ahead of time and note any questions that you may have. I look forward to answering all of your questions and reviewing this information in detail during our appointment on Thursday at 9 a.m. By the way, there are a few things you may want to have handy for our appointment. A spare key, we will need this for the lockbox. A recent mortgage statement. Homeowners Association information, right? If you know it's in an HOA, if not, take that out. A copy of your trust or LLC, right? If you know it's held in an LLC or a trust, let them know ahead of time. Again, I look forward to meeting you on Thursday at 9 a.m. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions. Sincerely, Amy Petard, real estate professional, Realty One Group Fox. Right? Nice little cover letter that goes with the package. Do you see how we're setting ourselves up for success? Hey, have a recent mortgage statement, have your homeowners information, association information, and make sure you have that spare key ready to go. I'm going in with the assumption I'm going to get the listing. Okay. I showed you this slide already and showed you how to find that listing presentation. I would just use that, and then I would go in there and tweak it and adjust it appropriately. Make sure you put your pictures in there, make sure you fill in the information, read all the paragraphs, make sure it makes sense to you, make sure it makes sense to them. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out about that one. The other thing that you may want to put in your pre-listing package along with the CMA report is what kind of market are we in currently, or where do we see the market headed in the next few weeks, right? We've had this conversation before in this group about the type of market it is. So generally, if we look at like days on market, if you've got 1 to 5 months of inventory, it's a seller's market where the sellers are in control. Okay, if you've got 6 months of inventory, that's a balanced market. And if you have 7 to 12 months of inventory, that's a buyer's market. So that's the general rule of thumb. Now, In California, we've been in a seller's market for so long where properties are literally in contract. They could be in contract on day one on the market. Most people hold them on for 7 days on the market just to get multiple offers to help drive the prices higher and win for our sellers. That the second we shifted and things sat like 2 weeks on the market, everybody panicked, right? And the buyers thought, man, I can get everything in my favor. And the sellers thought, I'm doomed. I just have to take any offer that comes my way. And it was a funky market because there was still only like 2 months of inventory on the market. We look back at the stats over the last year, but most of our offers were being negotiated with closing costs to the buyers. All the buyers were asking for closing costs. All the buyers wanted a deal. All the buyers wanted the sellers to give them something because the buyers thought, well, the market shifted and now it's my time. And the sellers were like, oh, I'm scared. I have to take everything. So we do not have anywhere near 5 months of inventory on the market currently. And we're in this limbo land of we're starting to see multiple offers come back. We're starting to move way back into a seller's market. But even like my last listing, I had 6 offers on it. I think 5 out of 6 of the buyers asked for closing cost assistance. So we still accepted an offer where we gave somebody closing cost assistance. We just had to take that into account. So just kind of keep that in mind. And if you're like, I have no idea what the current market is, number 1, ask your mentor. Number 2, if you don't have your mentor, ask other agents in the office that have listings. You just be like, hey, I've got a listing appointment coming up this week. I know you've had a couple listings hit the market over the last couple of weeks. What are you seeing with your listings? Have they gone pretty quick? Are you getting multiple offers? Are you getting lots of showings, right? What's going on with the market? Ask around. It's okay to do that. Okay. Does anybody have questions about the type of market? Just so everybody knows too, I usually include, so with my listing agreements, and we'll cover this more, but I usually include in my pre-listing package as well, the listing agreement. Anything I'm going to ask them to sign with the listing agreement is going to be in that pre-listing package that I'm going to drop off. Not because I'm going to have them necessarily sign everything on the spot, but I want them to be able to review it. So one of those is disclosure information advisory. It just talks to them about what they need to disclose regarding their property. The listing agreement for obvious reasons, and all of the attached documents to the listing agreement, which is like your agency disclosure, your possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, your wire fraud advisory, your seller's advisory at the end of the listing agreement. I think it's got the California Consumer Privacy Act. It's probably got like the fair appraisal in there. Who knows what else is attached to that, but I may rearrange the order, right? So if I'm looking at order of my documents, I probably have like the agency disclosure first. I have the listing agreement because it's going to my pre-listing packet second. Then I'm probably going to move on to like the disclosure information advisory. Then I may include a copy of the seller property questionnaire and the transfer disclosure statement. I'm also probably going to include a copy of the market conditions advisory because it advises the sellers that ultimately what they choose to list their house for is up to them, and that the market's cyclical. There's ups and downs and it moves all around, and it's important for them to understand what kind of market we're in at what time. The statewide buyer and seller advisory usually goes out with my listing agreement. The square footage and lot size addendum, I usually have them fill out. If the property was built before 1978, they get a lead-based paint disclosure. And if it was built before 1965, they get the earthquake hazard disclosure. So I kind of like to give that all to them up front. The water heater and smoke detector statement of compliance, the carbon monoxide and water conserving plumbing fixtures disclosure. I like to give that all to them ahead of time to review because I'm going to ask them to sign all of that at some point before the listing goes live. So you can decide what you want to include in your pre-listing packet. You may just do like a copy of the listing agreement and call it a day. That's totally up to you, or you could include everything. I just kind of switch up the order if I'm going to include everything, so the important things are on the top. Let's see here. We're going to dive into the CMA on Thursday, and tomorrow we'll dive into the actual listing presentation. Does anybody have any questions before that time as we wrap up for today? Make sure you open up the chat box if you haven't already and log your attendance. And just so you guys know, when I put together my pre-listing package to drop off on their doorstep, it usually starts with the cover letter. Then it goes with the listing presentation and then the CMA report. And then it follows up with any copies of the documents that I've included. It usually goes in that order. I usually put it in a nice, like a folder, or you can like go and take it and get it, kind of spiral bound, or buy a binding machine. I don't know if Realty One Group has one in office. But I want it to look nice. So I usually put like a clear cover sheet on the front of it. If there's homework that I want them to complete and fill out for me, then I use those. I usually put those loose kind of in the back or in the pocket in the back of the folder. And I usually drop off like a little gift as well with my pre-listing presentation. So they get the pre-listing presentation. And then we were doing for a long time, we were doing like a hand soap with a little tag on it that said, if I can give you a hand with selling your home, let me know. And then that way, number one, it was like a weight, so it couldn't blow away in case they weren't home when I dropped it off. And then number two, it's just something cute and fun that sets me apart from other people. So you can like go on the Pinterest and search pop by for sellers and find like really cute little gifts that you can leave for potential sellers to help pique their interest and make you a little bit more memorable. I think that's all I got for you guys today, unless anybody has questions. Alrighty, fabulous. I hope you guys, Anastasia, did you have a question?
No, ma'am.
All right. Brittany, you good as
Thank
well?
you, Amy. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. All right. Everybody have a fabulous day. Log your attendance. And just so everybody knows, I'm looking at that list of like trainings that you want, because I'm getting ready to put together the June schedule. So make sure you don't skip that part when you go log your attendance. You can log in like trainings you'd like to have, because our schedule is opening up and I get to recreate it. So put in your desired trainings in there so that we can cover new stuff. And I will see you all tomorrow at 11 o'clock for the listing presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.